In 2008, we had a fire that started just right up behind the visitor center. There's a couple houses up here, and it was an electrical fire or some burn pile or something. I don't know. Nobody really knows. It's a mystery. But it went up along this ridge line and burned essentially this entire, what you're looking at here. Came over and burned the preserve, about 20 acres of the preserve, which on this side of the water, that whole area. You can actually see some of those trees down there that are pretty black still. Those were all burned. And then it hopped over these Peekaboo Hills and went on the other side for about 14,000 acres. And the amazing thing was when it was burning here, it was really, really windy. And the Forest Service people were like, oh, we'll have it out in a day. And then it went over the hills and just took off across that desert. And this used to be really, really nice sagebrush habitat, bunchgrass, sagebrush, wildflowers. Luckily, this north-facing stuff has come back pretty well. Is that north-facing, the cheatgrass isn't moving, the weeds aren't quite as bad. If you walk up into those hills from this side, you'll see a lot of wildflowers coming back and little sagebrush coming back. Over on our side of the preserve, right here, if you go down there, you can't even really tell what's been burned, except you'll see little stumps of sagebrush. But kind of, you see where the sagebrush sort of ends right here? From there down is what burned. And it used to be sagebrush that was over your head. I mean, really tall, big old sagebrush, which really probably needed to burn. It's pretty old. And you go back in there and it's really come back nicely. You can see small rabbit brush and sagebrush coming in. We seeded it with a native grass mix just by hand. And to be completely honest, I think it probably would have come back pretty nicely anyways, but that certainly helped. You can see a lot of bunch grasses. There's just a couple patches of weeds. And it's a small enough area that the weeds are easily controlled. So if you guys want to walk down there, you can walk around this willow area and kind of see the area that we seeded. But those bunch grasses and the sagebrush, that's really what the birds really need and want. So it's pretty nice. The other side of the Peekaboo Hills is not such a pretty story. A lot of burnt sagebrush, and it's come back in really full of cheatgrass. And the BLM did not seed those areas because they were so steep. They only seeded the flat areas way out in the desert, and those I think are coming in pretty nicely. But some of the hilly stuff on the other side of the Peekaboo Hills is just a fire waiting to happen again. So, is that good?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's important because that's a really important role now as sagebrush or fire within our sagebrush landscapes becomes more frequent and more intense and more severe, is that we recognize that we need to follow up in important areas with restoration. And like Dana said, she thought that it probably would have came back pretty well, but oftentimes when we get a really hot fire that burns through an area, if the burn intensity is hot enough, it'll kill the seed within the soil as well. And so it's not bad insurance to come back in and reseed afterwards, because it's really important that you do get seed on the ground right after a fire. You have viable seed within the soil right following a fire, so that it can immediately capture those resources the next spring and get established there. Because if you don't, and weeds and invasive grasses like cheatgrass come in and dominate a site, then it becomes very difficult and very expensive to try to restore. So I think that it would be good for us to go down there and take a look.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
The more time you spend hunting people and like
No, I got it.
Or was this the bottom of an ocean at some point?
There's another one right behind you. There's like a bunch of
wait, was that?
No.
Remember how we were talking about the transition areas from the hills down into the riparian and creek systems? Why would this spot be important to sage-grouse? Right, so all animals have to drink water, right?
Yeah.
And if you're up in the hills and in the desert, you're looking for the closest water source, which for any of these Peekaboo Hills up there is going to be Silver Creek.
going out a little bit further. Alex, no, just a little further.
People outside can know exactly. Go collect some data of all those. Once in a while, you can get super. People outside can know exactly. Go collect some data of all those.